the particular piece of legislation is not operational in terms of its effect in getting information to the public. And I hope that honourable member for St. John's Rural West is listening, because he's one of the members that love to brag about the trilogy of legislation. You've got to look at its operationalization, whether or not it is working, if people are getting information under that particular regime. And I want to put it to the honourable member and his government that the Freedom of Information Act is not working. Now, Madam Speaker, you'll recognize that several attempts to get information from the government was actually dealt with either in a frivolous way or there were no response, which meant, therefore, we had to elevate the situation. And it got to the stage where we decided to protest, because here's a situation in which we got conflicting reports, Madam Speaker, evidencing that for sure there is something wrong in terms of the figures, and in addition to that, we were in possession of these letters written by the member for St. Philip South indicating that something was wrong. And clearly, we had already established from the onset that there were some procedural breaches. Now, Madam Speaker, having taken to the streets to get the attention of the government, what did they do? They treated us with scant regard. And perhaps they saw it as an exclusively partisan issue. But, Madam Speaker, it was not. In fact, I know at one point an attempt was made to quell the issue. And the Director of Public Works was actually asked to address the issue, Mr. Barry Davis. And he did. But, Madam Speaker, having listened and having read his report, we recognize that it was a cover-up. Because in that very report, the Director of Public Works indicated that he himself was not an integral part of that project. And as I indicated earlier, the Ministry of Public Works was not integrally involved. Yes, they had an engineer by the name of, I don't know if it's Cheyenne, or Shion, or Nigel Smith. Nigel Smith. So there was some representation at a relatively lower level. But in terms of the involvement of the PS in the administrative aspect of it, and the director, there was no such involvement. So we were surprised when the director came to the public and tried to quell the issue with his report, trying to mitigate or give reasons, some of them obviously reasons that cannot stand up to public scrutiny, reasons why there was overspending here, in fact in excess of 50 million of the amounts budgeted. In fact, one of the contracts that was actually doubled is the one for C.O. Williams, which moved from 27 million to approximately 54 million. It's virtually double. And he, Madam Speaker, tried to justify what happened in that case and to give the public the impression that they got good value for money. Now, Madam Speaker, we then decided to get an engineer in. And we got a very respectable and qualified engineer. And I'd prefer to leave the name anonymous, but to say that this particular engineer, Madam Speaker, is also a director of public works in a neighboring island, someone who has extensive experience dealing with these issues, and someone, Madam Speaker, who also presided over the development of a stadium in his country, so that this person is integrally involved in this type of work. And after, Madam Speaker, we got the report from our engineer, a copy that we could make available to the honourable members. In fact, this report, Madam Speaker, is on taken sides. So this is not a fictitious report as indicated by the member for Rural North. This is real. This is a real assessment that was done by a human being who is eminently qualified, someone who went in there, did the work, took all the photos. In fact, he has given us tangible evidence. Whereas the Director of Public Works gave us a lot of subjective information, this engineer went in there and gave us tangible information supported by photographs. And as they say, Madam Speaker, a picture tells 1,000 words. Now, in his report, Madam Speaker, which was done on February 27th, 2008, he indicated the chain of command in relation to the construction at the stadium to be Ambassador Shaul as the coordinator, Mr. Sheehan Samuel, the engineer, venue development coordinator, Mr. Nigel Smith, the engineer who was representing Public Works. And he says here, Madam Speaker, Ambassador Shaul, while one might not have the direct involvement in contracts, administration, and issue of contracts, which is not necessarily the case, because clearly in the letter, Madam Speaker, he said that he was putting certain proposals to CEO Williams, which indeed was a contract. He says here that the project coordinator, such individual, is fully aware of activities.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order.
And is expected.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker. I do not think
What's
that...
the point of order?
Madam Speaker, if the member is going to speak to a specific document, I think the author of the document which is being presented to this Honourable House should be made public, because here is a serious motion we're dealing with, and thorough research must be done into this author to ensure that the credibility which the member has placed in the author exists. And as a member of this House, Madam Speaker, I would love to know who the author of the report is and how soon can we be furnished with a copy of the report.
Honourable Member, I'm actually in the process of going through my standing orders to see whether we can allow this report to be quoted from an anonymous source. I'm thinking that this is a serious, it's anonymous to us.
Madam Speaker, I'll give you the name. The name of the engineer who has a master's degree in civil engineering is a gentleman by the name of Calvin Pemberton. Calvin Pemberton.
And you will please make copies of that report available.
No problem, Madam Speaker. Anyway.
Because as it stands now, you realize this is just somebody's opinion.
Madam Speaker, I am giving you the opinion of our engineer.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So he says here, Madam Speaker, that Ambassador Shaul, as the coordinator, obviously would have been involved in the change of the scope of works, which has financial implications and must be discussed at the meeting which the project coordinator chairs. So, for instance, Nigel Smith, the engineer representing Public Works, had no such authority. So, for those who argue, including Mr. Charles Red Barry Davis, that Ambassador Shaul had no involvement, that is absolute nonsense, Madam Speaker. The reality is, he was integrally involved in the process. I think what they're confusing, Madam Speaker, is that he may not have been involved in the administrative arrangements effecting the contract, but in terms of the decision, Madam Speaker, awarding the contracts and varying the scope of work, he had to have presided over that as the chair, Madam Speaker. I see the Honourable Member for St. John's Rural West is getting animated. But the reality is, Madam Speaker, if he had no role, then why was he appointed as the coordinator? Coordinate what? What was his role? And I hope when the member for St. John's Rural West speaks, that you will tell the nation what role did Ambassador David Shaul played in this project, considering that he was appointed the chairman of the intergovernmental group that presided over these works. So was he just a figurehead? And if that is the case, if it wasn't David Shaul, then who authorized the scope of work and the change in the scope of work and the payments? And even if, Madam Speaker, assuming that Ambassador David Shaul had no such locus, then why did he write this letter to CEO Williams on the 20th of January 2006, indicating certain proposals, to use his word, Madam Speaker? Then he had no such locus. Why did he write that letter? And I want to put it to the members on the other side, that Ambassador David Shaul must have been integrally involved. And by the way, Madam Speaker, I believe that his appointment in the first instance represented a conflict. In fact, Ambassador David Shaul, as an ambassador, should be dealing with diplomatic relations, not no project, capital project.